My guest is Gail Philbert, and no different from any of my other guests, she has a multitude of talents. She's a mother, a psychic, a medium. She practices various healing modalities, and she has played unusually in a punk rock band for at least 10 years. I'm sure she'll tell us all about it. She does many psychic readings at corporate events and parties, and she has also written a book. She works from home just outside of London in Essex. So, Gail, could you tell us when you first got started? How did you start
I
doing
can.
work?
I'm just going to let you know, because my name is pretty unpronounceable, I actually work under the name Gail Hart, which is easier to pronounce because nobody can pronounce my actual surname is Thibert, and so nobody can pronounce it. So I work under the name of Gail Hart, which is my son's surname. So how I got started? Well, very, very young. I think I was about 4 years old when I was aware of past lives. I kind of floated over my body. I don't think I was ever properly connected. So I was always a bit daydreamy. And I had some health issues when I was younger. I had tuberculosis and I was on very strong medication. And I think the medication made me hallucinate, which made me aware of the unreal, if that makes sense. So I was kind of aware of different realities, and it was very difficult to tell what was real and what wasn't. And then I started finding that I could see stuff other people couldn't, which was very real to me. And I was seeing figures by my bedside when I was very, very young, certainly primary school age. And my family, my dad's side of the family, were very psychic, so it was nothing unusual. It's like, oh, you're seeing a ghost. What? So are we. They were all. My dad was aware of strange noises in our first house in Rains Park when I was very young, and he had every floorboard out up to see which was the creaking floorboard, because when he was on his own babysitting us of an evening, the floorboards would creak, and you think, well, that's weird. The kids are asleep. I'm here on my own. Why are the floorboards creaking? And we realized that we were not alone. So, but my dad was very into the spirit world, and his sister as well. And it wasn't unusual for them to do things like the Ouija board. And I've never really been drawn to that method of communication. I've always been a bit scared of the spirit world, and I actually tried to push it away. And then when I got to 12, I learned palmistry during an exercise at school. I was very drawn to books from the library, Arthur C. Clarke, the world of the unknown, and always fascinated by the idea that we're not alone. I believed in fairies as a little girl. I don't know that I ever actually saw one, but I kind of believed they existed. And I suppose, when you're a kid, you're brought up to believe in all sorts of stuff, aren't you? You're brought up to believe in witches and wizards and fairies and gnomes and elves and dragons and unicorns. So where are they all? They
Mhm.
must have, they've come from somebody's imagination. They've come from more than one person's imagination. So, where are they, Vina? Where are all the dragons and unicorns? That's what I want to know. Who's hiding them? Who's got them?
And Father Christmas as well. Where does he?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So they all must have our origins. And I can remember one lady I met who, she parades giants. She makes these big effigies of giants and she parades them at these kind of folk events like Hastings Jack in the Green. And she said to me, well, there must have been giants because they're mentioned in all the fairy stories. So, why would someone just cook that up,
It's
that
actually
there were
in the
giants?
Bible, Gail.
Are they?
Yes.
I haven't read the
Very
Bible since
beginning
I was
in
very
Genesis,
little.
yeah. It's a very, very small reference, but in the beginning of Genesis, it says, and there were giants. And I believe
Yeah.
that they liked the women on earth and created children with women. How giants did that with the women, I don't know, but I guess you can use your imagination.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, sorry, my phone just beeped, and I do apologise for it disturbing you. I'll just turn it down. Um, yeah. So where does reality end and the supernatural begin? And I've always had this fascination for it. And I was very aware of my past lives when I was 4 years old. And, you know, it's very interesting at the moment. There's a lot out in the open now about non-binary, people being non-binary, and gender changes, you know, transgender and so forth. When I grew up, I was convinced I was a boy. You know, there was no kind of I didn't feel I was transgender or anything like that, but I was aware that maybe I'd been a boy in my previous life, and that I had this confusion as like, well, hang on, what am I doing in a woman's body? And I do wonder sometimes if people, I mean, obviously not everybody, if there is some element of us having our past life memories coming into this life. You know, it took me a long time to accept that I was now Gail. You know, I was because as a kid I was like, well, who am I? Who is this Gail? Because I think I still had a lot of past life stuff coming in with me. And actually, to confirm that, I have met people from those past lives who have been able to confirm, yes, you look like this, and I was so and so. So it's all a very interesting topic. But in answer to your question, when did I first? Well, 4 years old. You know, I was probably 4 years old. First palmistry at 12, and then I got into tarot at 19. Does that answer your question?
It does indeed, yes. So from a very early age, you were obviously having experiences that showed you that everything was not as 3D or as touchy-feely and everything that we can see and touch in this world, that there was something beyond.
Yeah, I was seeing stuff other people weren't. And the things that stick out in my mind, and funny, if I'm writing about this, I'm trying to do a second book, which I'm hoping to call Under No Illusions.
Book. Could you, yeah.
Well, my first book is called Soap the Stamps Jump the Tube by Gail Bear. And it's out of print at the moment, but I do need to reprint it. So I will get on with that. But and in my first book, it's mainly about my punk life and music, but I do mention some psychic experiences in it. But one of a couple of things I didn't mention in that, because that book goes from age 16 onwards. If I was to go further back to some of the earlier experiences, I mean, at 7 years old, I can remember we went to the park. We had I grew up in Surrey, in Morden in Surrey, and there was a park near us called Nonsuch Park, and I can remember going there with my mum, dad, and my sister. And there were some little figures in the horizon. They were like tiny little figures, and nobody could tell who they were. And I just said, "That's Nanny over there. That's Nana." And my mum was like, "Don't be so silly. You can't see who it is from here." And I was absolutely convinced that's Nana. And I pointed to each figure in the horizon. I said, "That's Nana. That's Auntie Yvonne. That's Auntie Annette. That's so and so, so and so." And I went through about 7 figures and named them all. And I was insistent we would go and meet them because I was convinced that's family over there. Now, they didn't live near us, so the likelihood of them being there was very slim. They lived the other side of London. And anyway, my mum and dad just said, "Oh, she's not going to stop. Let's humour her. Let's go towards, see who these figures are." And sure enough, as we got closer, they were like, "How did you know? How did you know those tiny dots on the horizon were our family?" And I was like, "How did you not know?" I couldn't understand how other people couldn't know it. And unfortunately, I think sometimes when you are gifted, you can come across as arrogant. So I probably came across as incredibly arrogant. You know, I know. And it happened to be things like the telly would go on the blink, you know, the old-fashioned tellies in the great big boxes. You know, we had those, and it was always going on, you know, the lines would
them to bring them back.
Yeah, but they were always going wonky, weren't they? So my job was to put my hands on the telly and stop the static. That was my job. And I was the only one that could do it. Nobody else could do it. So my dad always thought I would be a healer. You know, my dad was very into the great psychics. He was a big fan of Doris Stokes. He read all of the Doris Stokes books. It was, you know, one of the early mediums.
So do you think your dad was a major influence in just accepting that you have these gifts? And
yes, definitely. You know, nobody batted an eyelid. And I can remember when my nana died, the one we'd seen in Nonsuch Park. My nana died very young. She died when she was 50. My nana was actually Norwegian, although she spoke English. We all spoke English. My granddad was French. My nana was Norwegian, so the common language in the house was English. And when she died, I could feel her energy, and I was about, I suppose, let's say 8, because I can't pinpoint if I was 7 or 9. So let's say about 8. And so around that age, a lot of stuff coming, a lot of awareness coming to the fore. So I would be aware of it. I can remember sitting at school and her voice coming to me because I was very down, and she just said, "You don't know why, Gail, but it will all make sense to you. This will all make sense to you later on in your life." And I was like, I had no idea what she was talking about. Of course, I was only young. But one of my cousins, he's probably 3 years younger than me. He used to see her at the top of the stairs in my granddad's house, and you say, "Well, who's that lady at the top of the stairs?" "Well, that's your nan." Nobody batted an eyelid. No, it's like, "Yeah, that's your nan." But the other thing, I mean, my mum was quite open to it all, and I think both sides of the family, I grew up, I suppose I was born in 1964, grew up in the 70s, and it was quite popular to do a bit of fortune telling around the table, kind of a parlor game. So there was playing cards, we'd sit and do playing cards. But one of my aunts would do tea leaf reading with the book, because she wasn't that gifted, so she was trying to learn tea leaf reading. So nobody was ever, "Oh, that's a bit weird." But my mum, I remember sitting on the sofa when we moved to Morden, and the living room door would just open on its own. And again, that is like, "Oh, we've got company." We didn't think, "Whoa, what's that?" "Oh, come and join us." So my mum would say, "Entree, come in." And it was as if somebody was walking around the room, and then they'd go out and the door would just shut again. And that was quite common. Did that not happen in your house? Really? But
No.
you're a medium.
Yes, but talking about you today.
Have you ever had that happen? Have you ever been somewhere and that's happened?
I've had all kinds of strange experiences in my life.
Yeah,
So we never said entree and had visitors come in and sit with us around the table, because I think probably my mum and dad were not really not in the same way open to things. But I will say, when my dad died, I was 11, and I
yeah,
used to be afraid of the dark until then. But once he died, I was never, from that point onwards, I was never afraid of the dark, because I could actually feel him with us,
yeah,
and he
yeah,
smoke. And my mum used to say that she could see the little cigarettes
yeah.
ashes blowing away when she felt him around. So
That's
we did have that they didn't finish, they weren't ended, that they were around, and they've gone off to some other, well, heaven. We thought they'd gone to heaven
yeah.
from when they were
It's
looking after us.
incredible. It's incredible stuff, isn't it? I
Mm,
mean, when my mum died, I remember staying at my mum's friends. My son was two months old, and I woke up and I could smell toast, and I thought, "Oh, she's up early. She's made toast." I went downstairs, nothing. The toaster wasn't even warm, and I
mm.
said, "Oh, I can smell toast." And my mum's friend said, "Oh, that's your mum. She often visits." And we could always smell toast, because when she used to stay here, she'd get up early, make herself some toast, have a cigarette and a cup of tea. So she'd come to visit while I was there.
Yeah,
It is incredible stuff, isn't it?
yeah, it is incredible. And I think that probably what happens is lots of people block it off because they are frightened. Um, I mean, I did have some scary experiences as well, but I think the majority of people actually do want to block it. And it's
Yeah,
not that they don't know about it or they don't have experiences, but they actually choose that not to have any participation in anything like that, because it's too scary for them. And then
yeah,
and to make sense of it all, everybody will kind of, especially in those days, a long time ago, they're more likely to make fun rather than to be listening and interested and wonder what's behind it. But
yeah,
thank you for sharing the history of how it's come about. Um,
yeah.
you actually do a lot of corporate events where you read for many
Yeah.
people, which is very surprising because I think the majority of people would believe that in the business world, people wouldn't take that kind of thing seriously. And yet there you are, year after year, going to companies, probably big known companies, and doing readings for individuals who probably take it very seriously and who are surprised by what you say. And so it can't be as closed off as we think it is. Could you tell us
No,
about one of
sure.
the main something where you've really helped somebody at a corporate event, maybe change their thinking?
Well, I don't. The thing is, sometimes you go in and you do these parties, and you've got 5 minutes for each with each person, if you're lucky, and you don't know what that one or two words that you say, the impact that can have. And the funny thing is, so I think where I differ from a lot of psychics and mediums is I'm not frightened to call myself a fortune teller. And a lot of people don't like that. It's almost like a dirty word.
Well, I think it
Where
comes from the old days, isn't it? When it was just gypsies, they regarded gypsies who were given
yeah,
a name in those days, because they
yeah,
were always scared that they would curse them as well. So I think that's why.
yeah, if you don't pay me enough, that's it. It's a curse upon your head. um, well, look, my mum said that we've got Romany blood, but I don't know how far back it goes. And funny enough, I'm actually renting a Romany caravan these days on a Tuesday in Waltham Abbey. If you're free on a Tuesday, come on down.
That's
I don't. So we're actually hired at these events as fortune tellers because I think it's very tongue in cheek. I don't think anyone's coming seriously. That people are drinking, they're having a party. I don't think everyone's kind of expecting their life to be changed, and so it's a bit like how people view astrology. Like they'll read a bit in the papers and take it with a pinch of salt, but they're actually kind of hoping that there's going to be some good luck. We were all looking for a bit of luck, good luck, a bit of upliftment.
yeah.
So when I do corporate bookings, it's very different to private work because private work, people are coming with their problems, with their issues, and you can really, they're spending at least half an hour to an hour with you. You can get your teeth into it and helpfully try to give them some clarity on where their life is going. With the corporate side, as I say, you've got limited time. They've had a few drinks. You've got to be careful with your words because, especially when people have had a few drinks, they may twist what you say. And I have got myself into trouble. I'll put my hand up to that and I'll tell you about that. Well, I'll tell you about that now because I won't remember if I leave it. But I did a corporate event. It's very, very posh hotel and it's so funny. Now, you work with guides, you'll understand this, that sometimes your guides will say to you, I don't think you should go. But do we listen? Because you got that carrot dangling. We're going to pay you some really good money to go to this hotel. And it is generally, well, it used to be really good money. These days, people are a bit more careful with their spending. But I was on my way, funnily enough, I had this old camper van and I've been somewhere else before. And I thought, I've got plenty of time. I'll go, go to this booking. And the van overheated. And I was like, I must make it to the booking. And I had to call out a taxi and I got there in the nick of time to this booking. And when I got there, the music was blaring. So if you've got loud music, they say you should be able to meditate in the middle of Piccadilly Circus. I can do readings in noisy parties, but I like to be able to hear the person I'm talking to. I like them to be able to hear me. So it was really blaring. They were serving free martini cocktails, the espresso cocktails, so that everyone was absolutely flying high as a kite. People were doing fake ballet dancing around the place, and I just thought, and they'd hired me as a fun fortune teller. This lady came along and she said, am I going to get pregnant? Something like that. And normally we avoid stuff like if you work on the telephone lines, you're not allowed to talk about pregnancy, fertility, because it's such a sticky subject. And I think by then this lady had come up to me, I'd had so much of like all this barrage, and I just thought, do you know what? If you're going to ask a question, I'm going to answer you. So I was working with the runes, and the runes said restriction. So I just said to her, I said, in a big hammed up voice, because I just costume on and everything. I said, I see restrictions. The road ahead is restricted. Anyway, She complains. She complains. And I got a message from my agent saying, what did you say to that lady, Gail? She's complained that you said there were blockages to her getting pregnant. And then I thought, oh, I know exactly what happened. She had the restriction rune, but she'd had a few drinks, she'd twisted it. And I thought, oh my life. So I had to kind of dig myself out of this hole and say, you know, I'm really sorry, but I get asked some really weird questions when I'm at a party. We're meant to be having fun. So that was a kind of lesson to me. But where you're asking if I've ever made an impact with people who are, as I say, we don't get the feedback because we might not ever see that person again.
I didn't realize the readings were so short at the corporate events. I thought that,
Yeah,
you know, they sat
yeah.
down and had a good 10 minutes or something.
They might have 10 minutes, but you know, my record, Halloween was really busy this year, and my record, and this other lady that works as part of my team, we did a record 15 people an hour. You know, 15 an hour. That's a lot.
That's a
That is
lot.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you telling people? That's fortune telling. That's quick, quick, quick. But in fact, one of those 15 people an hour I did, her message, and you can't help, if you're a genuine psychic, you can't help when you open your mouth, you don't have full control over what comes out, which is why it's so important to work with your guides and your gatekeepers. And you know me, sometimes I blurt stuff out and I get myself in trouble because it just comes out and I can't help myself. It's not always popular. But this one lady, she had, I think it was the devil card came up, and I looked at the devil cards. You work with tarot yourself, don't you? So you know it can mean addictions and so forth. And I just looked at the card and I said, I think you've got a friend that's drinking too much and you need to tell her, because when she's drunk, she's kind of really out of control. Now, that's all more or less I said to her in that few minutes I had with her. And she just looked at me and said, oh, my life, I've been meaning, I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly who you mean. I've been meaning to have a word with her. And right in front of me, she got her phone out, rang the friends and said, the psychic told me. So I got the blame for it. The psychic told me that you, but it works. And the friend turned around to the client and said, if you hadn't have had a word with me, she said, I kind of knew. I knew my drinking was out of control, but I needed someone to tell me. So that's an example of it. Even one little kind of word, it'll just come out. You just go, right. You don't always realize the impact you're having. The other thing I do remember, I know we're going to be short on time. I'm going to talk and talk and talk as much as I can.
It's okay. I do want to ask you about your healing work as well, your flower remedies.
Sure. I'll just tell you this one thing, because you asked about the impact we have at corporate events. And even though they think it's a bit of light entertainment, which it should, we try to. This lady sat in front of me after mediumship, and I thought, how am I going to do mediumship? I've got the party going on to my right-hand side, places full of people, not the ideal scenario. But she said, I'd really like a message from my mum. And I said, look, I'm not meant to, I'm actually just booked for tarot, but because, you know, I feel sorry for, you know, I'm an empath, you know, as you are, you want to make people happy. Yeah. So I just said I put what I call a phone call out. I put a phone call out to spirit, and I said, well, okay, give me something for this girl. They showed me the Tasmanian devil. Okay. A devil thing going on here. So they showed the Tasman. I said, I'm ever so sorry. It's a very noisy party. All I'm getting is the Tasmanian devil. She burst into tears. And she said, the Tasmanian devil was the last toy my mum gave me.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. So for her, so we don't know. We get, and I think we push stuff away where we think we're daydreaming.
Yeah. And we don't.
Yeah. You know, we don't realize that spirit where does inspiration come from, you know? So it's that whole thing. Anyway, healing. Yes.
Yes, because you do the flower remedies. When I say that word, flower remedy, it just brings just a lovely fairyland feeling to me. So
and so it should. I actually put a couple of flower remedies in my glass today.
Oh.
And I put in fringe violet, which is the psychic's friends. And the fringe violet, Australian bushflower remedy, creates a shield around you. It's a psychic shield, and every psychic should take some. I got into flower remedies. I mean, a lot of people have heard of Rescue Remedy, the Batch flower remedies, the English ones.
Buy it,
And
yeah.
yeah, and Dr. Edward Batch was the forerunner in, I think it was, I can't remember if it was the 1930s, but he was the forerunner that kind of came up with the essences.
Yeah.
And obviously, indigenous people have been using herbs and plants and flowers since the day they touched the earth, you know. So we can't say, well, one particular person invented them.
No.
But he really helped bring them to the forefront.
He probably brought a very Western understanding of it rather than the native cultures around the world.
Yeah, and you could probably argue that he commercialized them, whether that's a good or bad thing, but he got them out there.
Yeah.
People still use them today.
Oh, yeah.
And personally, I'm not a big fan of the English ones. A friend bought me back. She went to Australia. She bought me back a couple of essences, and one of them was called Angel's Sword or Angel's Word, and it's for removing negative astral entities, which is quite interesting. And the other one she got me was Southern Cross, which is for victim mentality. And when I read them up, I thought I was really offended. I thought, oh, she thinks I'm this poor victim. I'm a martyr. You know, I was reading, how dare you, you know. But actually, it resonated. They were remedies that I needed at that time. And years later, I plucked up the courage and I said to her, well, why did you choose, you know, what made you choose those remedies for me? She goes, well, to be honest with you, I just picked them randomly. She just went to the shelf and I'll have those two. She hadn't read them and thought, oh, that's Gail.
More than anything, just intuition, just.
She did. And I said, well, that was exactly what I needed at that time. And so I could do a whole program just on flower remedies, but the healing power of flowers, when I went through depression, I made myself buy a bouquet of flowers every week because the vibration of the flowers uplifts. What do we do when someone's feeling sad? When they're feeling sad, when they're ill, when we want to cheer people up, when we want to show them love, when we want to pay respects, we give flowers.
Yeah.
You know, and some people come from cultures where flowers are used in ceremonies. I mean, I grew up as Roman Catholic, and you'd have flowers in the church, but they weren't as important as, say, the candles and the incense. But there are other cultures where, for example, let's look at the Day of the Dead ceremonies. You know, they decorate the graves with flowers, and particularly with marigolds, and you know. So you know, I just find the flower remedies help heal people. Sometimes we haven't got time to sit and have a Reiki attune, you know, to have a Reiki healing or something like that, or a massage. But you can carry around a little bottle of flower remedies, stick it in your water, stick it under your tongue, do a spray. And funnily enough, this week I've had several people ask me for flower remedies. I've had about 3 people. I've got a lady who wants to stock them, the space clearing spray I do, because it does what it says on the tin. They work. It's as simple as that. They work. And I've got a lady, she yesterday turned up with a 5-week-old baby. She wants a spray for the 5-week-old baby. And so I'll do a bespoke one. I'll dowse, I'll pick up what resonates to the vibration of the child. And there's not just flower remedies I use crystal remedies as well, which I use more for children than I do for the flowers. The crystal ones I use are indigo essences. You've probably heard of the indigo children and indigo adults. And they were the indigo essences.
In case our audience have no idea at all what an indigo child or an adult is, you just want to very quickly say what they.
Well, I probably won't do it justice. Go on Google's your friends, or any other platform, because look, my understanding of the indigo is, you know, I was told I was an indigo adult, and I just said, well, I'm just me. I don't. How do I do this? It's very psychic, very sensitive, very aware human beings. No matter, and
exactly like you. So that describes.
Yes. but hopefully not as nuts as I am, you know, hopefully a bit more grounded. But yeah, very, very intuitive, maybe trying to adjust to this world, this physical world that we live in. And the indigo essences help us adjust our vibration to this physical world. And they were developed by two then 11-year-olds in Ireland. And the lady, Anne Callahan, that developed them, lived in a place, I think it's called Dragon's Gate or something like that, where she lives. I'd really love to go and see it. And she realized that they were really helping people with autism, ADD, ADHD. And there's a lot of children being born now that are being diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and other special educational needs. And I don't know if it's just a fact that we're more aware now, or if something's going on. You know, personally, I think there's something in the water, but that's just me. But anyway, the essences can help. They can help bring a sense of calm, a sense of sanity. The ones I prescribed for the child yesterday were no fear, because the baby was waking in the middle of the night. This is the mum's second child, so it wasn't a case of her being paranoid. She kind of knew that something wasn't right. So there was no fear, and there was also Poppy, which is for bringing calm and peace. You know, who doesn't want calm and peace?
Oh, exactly.
That?
Yeah. And even if you don't have
Putin, he doesn't want it. There's a few.
Calm and peace right now, really, don't they?
We should send some over to him. We should send some sprays.
It might help. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
for everyone, for Ukraine and Russia, all at the same time, give them all a little bit of spray. That might help to calm things down.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, I think these things they're kind of meant to happen in the world, is my way of seeing it, even though it's unpleasant.
Yeah.
Because if we don't kind of wake up as a humanity en masse and say, hang on a minute, if we're all going to be suffering from a potential nuclear war, that's going to affect all of us. It's not just going to affect the countries that are involved. So should we be, you know, thinking about this calm and peace as a whole, as a humanity? And it starts with me, the individual, doesn't it? We can't wait for somebody else to be doing that. So
Definitely. I mean, I'm not up with politics. I tend to live in my own little bubble. I don't really understand it all, to be honest. But I tell you what, it's a slight tangent, but have you ever read a book by Michael Bentine? I can't remember the name of it. Do you remember? Did you ever used to watch Michael Bentine's Potty Time? Do you remember that?
It rings a bell, but
let me take you into your past. Do you remember Blue Peter, you know, children's program, Michael Bentine's Potty Time?
Yeah.
It was as a box of frogs, and he had these little figurines, and he'd like enact these kind of like little wars, little battles with these little figurines that he had. Anyway, Michael Bentine's Potty Time. Michael Bentine's parents were paranormal investigators, and not a lot of people know that.
No.
Know him as this TV presenter, children's TV presenter, but he wrote a book, and this lady told me about it. She's actually one of my students. You know, she said, read this book, Gail. And I don't read very well, I'm dyslexic, but I did read this book. And I remember this one thing that stuck out was this: they talked about this incredibly spiritual guy that his dad knew, that lived the street he lived in. The whole street got bombed, and the only house that was standing was this spiritual guy's house. And there wasn't even any scorch marks, nothing. And he was just like so attuned.
I have heard stories like that around the world as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just need to focus on our own protective bubbles, really. We'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I do believe it makes a difference. Whatever you're feeling and thinking inside, you're vibrating that out. So some people like to do it in terms of charity, some people do it in meditation, some people do it in prayer, but whatever I believe you have to start within. But that's just my.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. And it's a work in progress.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. None of us are perfect. I think anyone that would be perfect wouldn't be on Earth. They wouldn't have these challenges, and they wouldn't actually be on Earth. And I've always found that the psychic world, the psychics and the mediums have had more than our fair share of challenges, actually. And that's really how we've learned and how we've become compassionate. But Gail, in the last couple of minutes that we have, we've got 3 minutes.
Okay.
If you were going to give some information and advice on people who, might be feeling a bit weird, seeing strange things, having visitations, what kind of advice would you give to them? How could you help them? Just what might you say?
Well, I mean, right. So sometimes people don't know there's a fine line between mental health and psychic work. So your first port of call would be to check out your mental health first of all, just in case, there is some physical cause or emotional cause. If you've worked through that and you still think actually this may be an awakening or something like that, then go and to find somebody psychic or your local spiritualist center or organization. Talk to somebody who's been through it. It might be that you need some kind of development or training, because if you don't learn some techniques to control what you're receiving, I always say it's a bit like the bouncer in the nightclub. You need that bouncer to watch what comes and goes in your auric field.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it's a bit like throwing your doors open to a party and just trusting that, just letting everybody come and go at all hours of the day and night. So you would need to learn some grounding, some centering, some protection, and then develop your gift. If you want to use it for other people or you want to just use it for yourself, find someone like Vina, find someone like myself. We'll do our best to help you. If we're busy, we'll signpost you to somebody that can help.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for that. And
You're welcome.
nearly at the end of time now. So I will put the information of how to contact you. So your website, your phone number. I will put.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry. If
I
that's
just
okay. Are you okay? Oh,
So I just had to mute there because I just had this big coughing fit. I do apologise.
no, it's fine. Don't
My
worry.
website is all the W's, Gail Hart, GailHart.co.uk. If you want to book me for a party or corporate event, then it's all the W's, crystalballevents.co.uk.
Thank you. After I've stopped the recording, do you want to have a little chat?
Lovely.
Okay, all right, I'll come back to you. Okay, so we're going to say thank you very much to Gail, and maybe Gail can come back on at some other point with even more information about all the things that she does, because I think we've probably scratched the surface. Okay, so bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.